Hello, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Killer Author Club. We are here with the incredible Wendy Heard, author of young adult and adult fiction, including her upcoming title, You Can Trust Me. It's fantastic, and we have a lot to talk about. So grab your cocktails, your list of questions for Wendy, and sit tight. We will be right back.
Thought you really loved me, guess I was wrong. Thought you'd never leave me, guess I was dumb. Waited like forever to be your plus one, but I guess you were done. Left me at
We are back, and we are the killers of the Killer Author Club. You guys, thank you for being here. You know the drill. We are all over Facebook. We have the Killer Author Club. We have the Killer Author Clubhouse for our really hardcore people who want to join a members only group and that's also where we host our book clubs. You may have seen we were just on, I don't know, about an hour ago with Laura McHugh talking about her phenomenal What's Done in Darkness, and stay tuned for our next book club announcement coming up later in the show because we have our next already planned and you will die. We also have a YouTube channel where you can stream us to your big flat screen TV on the wall, and you can find us all wasting entirely too much time on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and probably a couple others that I don't even know about. For links to everything, watch the comments or check out our Killer Author Club website, killerauthorclub.com. And now, without further ado, Heather, would you please introduce our killer guest?
Oh, I would love to. Wendy Heard is the author of suspense and thrillers for adults and teens, including the upcoming You Can Trust Me and Will Never Tell. Wendy has spent most of her life in Los Angeles, California, which is on fire more than she would honestly prefer, and can often be found haunting local hiking trails and bookstores. She loves all things vintage and has a collection of thrillers and adventure books from the 80s. You can hear more from Wendy through her newsletter at www.wendyheard.com. And Wendy, now give us a quick overview of You Can Trust Me.
Well, thank you so much for having me, first of all. It's really fun to see both of your faces. And for those watching, we kind of know each other from various things. So it's a little bit of a friend reunion. So I'm just really happy to talk to you. So thanks for having me. Yeah, so You Can Trust Me is my third adult novel, but it's my first adult novel in a few years. I was doing more YA for a little while. And I've been kind of writing this one for like 3 years now. This is the longest time I've ever taken to write a book because it's been in the background a little bit. Like I had the main character, Summer, and I plugged her into a few books, and I finally found her story. So it was very exciting to get this published. It's about two best friends who live sort of a hashtag van lifestyle. They live in Summer's tricked out Land Cruiser, and they kind of just travel around California. And Summer has always supported herself by pickpocketing and like running little small cons and small scams. And Leo her best friend, gets in on it, and they travel around kind of pickpocketing and scamming people and living their best lives until they meet up with a billionaire and target him, and things go slightly haywire. Turns out sometimes you can accidentally get in over your head living that kind of life. So yeah,
well,
that's You Can Trust Me.
Yeah, we loved it. And we'll talk more about the book in just a moment. But now everybody needs to settle in for the killer cocktail. Kimberly.
Yes. So, Wendy, you chose the a mojito mocktail. And if those letters are too small for you or going by too quickly, you can pop over to killerauthor.club.com and get the full recipe there as well. But Wendy, why did you choose a mojito mocktail for your cocktail tonight?
So this was very important because in the book, it's explicitly talked about by Summer and Leo many times that when you're in these situations, you've got to keep your wits about you. So neither of them allows themselves to really partake when they're on the clock. And it's a thing in the book that Leo does not drink when she's around Michael. And I wondered if anyone will catch this. You see her drink one time. She has a glass of wine at the very end, but you never on the clock, never on the clock. You do not play with not having your wits about you. So I was like, for these girls, we're going to give them a mocktail. Okay. And I wanted something California, something warm weather. I personally love this mojito mocktail, and I've made it for lots of times for people who don't drink. It really feels like you're having a cocktail. And it's very fresh, and you can make it as sweet or as not sweet as you want. And so it's very California.
And they do that too in the book. They make it look like they're drinking a cocktail when really
That's right.
there's no alcohol in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you for that. And cheers, Wendy, to another great book. Congratulations. And
thank you.
Yours are going to love it. Comes out in June, right? June
13th.
June 13th. Yes. Wonderful. All right. So now we're up for the killer question. Lane Fargo says that You Can Trust Me has sizzling wit, a flashbang plot, and scorching social commentary, and calls it the hot thriller of summer 2023. And Hallie Sutton says it's a blazingly sharp, sexy feminist thriller for those who wish The White Lotus season 2 told from the point of view of Mia and Lucia. And Wanda Morris calls it a slick and stylish thriller. Congratulations, Wendy. That's high praise from all those.
Thank you.
Readers. So now on to our killer question. Who do you kill? Without any spoilers, and your writing in general, I mean, who do you like to kill off?
So it's going to be a little Venn diagram here where you have extremely wealthy people and men, and then sometimes in the middle, you end up with extremely wealthy men.
The victims, otherwise known as the victims.
That's right.
The victims. Right. Sometimes it's just, maybe it's like just a little bit of like what do they call it when you're like living through your fantasies or something? You know, wish fulfillment. I don't know.
Yeah. There you go. Oh, funny. Yeah. So where did this initial idea of the book come from?
It really sprang from the idea of Summer as a character. She has a really like specific story that I've been wanting to write for a long time, of like a bohemian mom who raises her kid in a van and travels from campsite to campsite with these like ragtag bohemian hippie nomads that she sort of bonded with. And I've always been kind of fascinated with what that would be like for a kid who then grows up and she has no like official record of her existence. How does she survive? Her mom survived by panhandling and just various like drug dealing and whatever came up along the road. And Summer learned how to pickpocket really young, and that's always been her thing. And she's been doing it for her whole life. And, she actually has tried to get on the grid and she couldn't figure out how to do it. So this is just kind of what she's left with. And then also just the restlessness that like has bred in her, to where the idea of having like a house with all these things and having that be like, that's where you're stuck, is like so claustrophobic to her that she just can't imagine being tied to that, which I think is pretty interesting to think about. And maybe if you're someone who's like me, like you have a kid and you are tied down a little bit, maybe that's like a fun thing to sort of imagine a life like that. That's a little more like nomadic. And like today I feel like being in the mountains, so I go to the mountains, So the whole plot came from the idea of her. And then I really wanted to give her a companion that would be like a really complimentary companion, and think about what kind of a situation that they might naturally get into in this lifestyle. So that's kind of where, and I tried and threw away so many different ideas before I came up with this one.
That's interesting that you started the story with a character and then came up with a plot to fill your character. I don't think
I normally don't. Yeah, me neither. It doesn't normally happen that way. Normally it's like a log line that comes to me. Yeah. But in this case, I don't know, it was Summer.
Yeah.
But she must have really resonated with you, and to follow her story all the way through. And you answered half this question, but Renee wants to know, have you ever lived in a van? So where did the idea of like this, the van life, or we've heard it in the news a little bit lately, but have you ever had any experiences like that?
Yeah, so a little bit about me. I am from LA, but I was born in San Francisco, and my dad's always lived in San Francisco, and I've always lived here with my mom in LA. But I was like I swear, I feel like I have worn a groove between these two places my whole life, going back and forth, LA, San Francisco, LA, San Francisco. And as a kid, my parents both moved a lot. To be honest, we were pretty poor. And so we lived in apartments, and I moved almost every year of my childhood, all the way up until, I mean, I think even to this day, I don't think I've ever lived anywhere longer than 4 years. I think I've done like 2
Wow.
4-year stints, and every time I've moved pretty often. It's just worked out that way. So I have
You're an
always been a
expert.
bit restless. Yes. And I have really loved the idea. I think I could do it a nomadic life. I've always wanted to. Like, I have a dream of when my daughter graduates. I actually have a dream of just like living around the world, like 3 months at a time in different places. I just would love to live like that. So to me, it was like, I wrote this during the pandemic. I was stuck in my house, and this is something I've always dreamed of doing. And so it was, the time to write this book for real.
Mm.
Yeah.
Heather, who's the author who's going around in an Airstream right now?
Oh, yeah. Brenda Novak.
Brenda
So
Novak.
yeah, they
Really?
and her husband refurbished an Airstream, right? And it's a little
Yeah.
store, and she's going all the way across the country,
Mm.
stopping at different locations, serving coffee, and having conversations with other authors out of this.
That's really cool.
Super cool. Yeah, you can follow
So cool.
her.
I'll go check that out.
Yeah,
She's
yeah.
living the dream. But, she
Yeah.
also has grown kids, and
Mhm.
Yeah, she does. So yeah,
that's
it's
cool.
And there's
Yeah.
a certain amount of like I really want to kind of explore the dark side of that, because one thing I have noticed, like, as all that moving around, you're so occupied, your energy gets so occupied by all that moving around that does become sometimes hard to achieve certain things that you want to achieve, and like to focus in on things that kind of take have like a long lead time. Like in college, I always wanted to study abroad for a semester. I could just never make it happen because I was like, I have this apartment and I have this job, and like I had just moved into this apartment. And so when you don't have a lot of like stability, it becomes kind of hard to get to the next level on certain things that you really want to do. And so there's that part of it too, where Summer gets a little stuck in this too, and it becomes a little bit of a claustrophobic thing in itself. And I kind of wanted to write about that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And you do. You definitely feel that, the push and pull of, I want to be out there on the road, but how am I going to, get all these things, achieve all these goals that she set out for herself. So what about Michael? Was he based on anybody we might know from the news?
Michael's a composite. Okay. I wanted him to be up to certain things that were sort of Jeff Bezos-y, a little bit Elon Musk-y. You know what I mean? Like, but I wanted
all those vibes.
Yeah. And a little bit like, I wanted him to be like, I wanted the Tesla vibe. I wanted the Amazon, like the Reach vibe, but I also wanted to make him really philanthropic, because I wanted to talk about how these people can kind of come off as like, I'm this philanthropic do-gooder, like, no, I use it for good, and how that can also be like a shield and very self-serving sometimes.
Yep.
So he's a little bit of a composite character. Plus I made him way hotter than any of those guys are. So, for the purposes of our entertainment.
Yeah, I loved it. He came across as, such a, especially in the beginning, such a good guy that you just knew there was something. There was
Yeah. I was like, the second he walks onto the page, they're going to like clock him right away. There's no way.
Did you watch, what was that? I think it was Apple TV, Loot. No, was it Loot? No, what was it? The one with, it was a type like Michael, who was married and oh God, I'll come back on it. I'm going to Google it and then I come back.
You got to tell me, because I want to check it out. I haven't seen this.
It's really good. It's more funny than it is scary, but it has a character with this kind of vibe.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm like Apple TV show about billionaire.
Yeah.
Undercover billionaire? That's probably not right.
I know. That's it.
Okay, you got to tell me, because it's Loot.
Loot. Yes.
Yeah,
with
it's
Maya Rudolph.
Yeah. I
Yes.
love her.
Yeah,
I'll go
good.
check that out.
It's so good.
I'm gonna have to check that out too. So yeah, Wendy, so like all your other books, you've got this book stars some really badass women who can and will do pretty much anything to save themselves, feminist fiction. Where does that that idea for writing come for you? Why do you choose to pursue?
Yeah, I am really interested. I remember one time telling someone that I was interested in telling another woman actually that I was interested in the type of violence that women might commit and the reasons that women might commit violence. Everything from I was just interested in that. Like I was interested in female serial killers, but I was also interested in like defensive violence, like protective violence, like what kind of things might it look like when we are in the position of having to do violence. And I remember her saying like, well, women don't do violence. That's only men. And I remember being really kind of fascinated by that, but see, that's why I'm interested in it, because I think we have this idea about women that we're very like, I don't know. I was just like, that's such an interesting thing to hear someone say, you know, I was like, that's why I think I'm interested in exploring this. And Summer and Leo don't do like physical violence as part of their lifestyle, but I would say that their lifestyle is sort of like psychologically violent toward the people around them. Like they victimize people in a way, like they consider themselves like they're Robin Hoods and they're stealing from the rich and given to themselves. And there's a part of that that's like victimizing the poor college girl in the club who like just got her credit card stolen, you know? So this is just more of me exploring those different kind of things that women might do and why we might do them. And at the same time, what kind of danger are we in? Oftentimes from the men around us, you know, just by nature. So it is that I'm just interested in that. It's just something that I'll probably keep writing about forever.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't agree with whoever that woman was who said women
Interesting,
don't do
right?
violence, because I mean, read a paper.
I was
know?
like, I went to
Watch the
school in
news.
inner city LA, so I could tell you right now that is not true. A hair flying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you know, I mean, women are often put in situations where, unfortunately, where they don't have any choice, right? They have to be violent in order to protect themselves and defend themselves. And, you know, it pushes sometimes people to, you know, places where they might not have thought that they were capable of being.
Yeah.
But yeah, women absolutely do commit violence. And we were actually, you know, right before you, we had Laura McHugh on talking about What's Done in Darkness. And I mean, there's some crazy stuff in that book.
I've been curious.
One of the worst ones in that story was a woman.
Yeah, and based
by a woman.
and based on a true story.
Based on a real life thing that happened.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
interesting. Here's a question from one of the folks in one of our Facebook groups. Have you ever changed the plot just because you like a character so much that you would change the story just to suit them?
I've done it in almost every book where I got partway into writing the book and then revised the beat sheet for it because I wanted to do something different with that character or give that character a chance to do something different. I've done it almost every time. Or there's a character on the side that I like think, no, I think these two characters have a lot of tension. Like, let's bring her in more, or those types of things. So I kind of started doing a writing process where I'll like kind of just notate the main points of the plot. You know, like if you use beat sheets, like the inciting event, the break into two, like I'll get those out. And then I won't do scene planning. I just do scene planning until like the next plot point. I don't try to like get too scene planning until, you know what I mean? Because I know I might change it. So I kind of found that plotter pantser middle ground.
But do you know when you're working like that where the story will end? I mean, do you kind of have a general sense?
I know at least where I'm gonna like the main thing I know I have to know to start writing is the dark night of the soul, like where it all goes wrong and you feel like you can't come back from this. I don't always know how the book will end. Sometimes I let myself get to that dark night of the soul and I kind of look at what I've done, and I have thought a lot about endings, and I think I've gotten better at them over the years. I've started to try to do a slightly different thing with endings where I think about how I would feel reading this and like, what are the promises I'm making the reader in this book? And like, what are the things you really need to see happen here? And how can I make sure that you walk away feeling like you mostly got what you needed, but it was in an unexpected way, you know,
Right.
like, and usually in a way that makes you feel like, yes, I got what I needed, but it's kind of just a little bit tainted by the dark things we've been through. Like, I feel like we've been through like a war, you know, like, oh my
Right.
gosh, yeah, we got what we needed, but that was a lot. Like, we're going to have to recover from this journey we've been on. So sometimes I don't know exactly what the right thing to make you feel that way is until I've gotten all the way to the like
Right.
darkness.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, how dark did this end up being? You know, because sometimes it gets darker than I expected.
Yeah. Well, I love
Yeah.
that because we talk a lot with all of our guests about, plotting versus pantsing and how they kind of, when they sit down to write their story, what
Mhm.
their method is and what their
Mhm.
but you are, and you've said this in other interviews, you're very much a planner, right? Even if you don't
Mhm.
plan down to the scene by scene stuff,
Yeah.
you're a planner. And I love this part, how you even when you can plan everything you want, even if you are doing scene by scene,
Mhm.
outlines, things are always going to change when you write them. You
'Cause
can't be
yeah,
too
like
structured.
you'll write a whole scene down, like this is gonna be a scene, and then you realize I could do that in 2 lines of dialogue. It's not even a scene.
Exactly.
Or you think you're gonna write this scene and you're like, "This is so boring. Oh my god, I need to do something different. Like, this information needs to get across a different way because I am dying of boredom writing this. They'll kill
Yeah.
me." You know,
Yeah.
so you do kinda have to, you don't know that until you start writing it down.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, it's good to know because I'm actually in the process of outlining my next book.
Yeah.
And I've kind of gotten to this, every book is different. Every story needs to
Mhm.
be handled differently, but I've kind of
Yeah.
like gotten to the midway point and I'm petering out in my outline and I'm like starting to get itchy to write it. So I feel like I just need to get in there before I can go
Yeah.
further with my outline.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm becoming a reformed pantser, and
Mhm.
he's helping me on this journey because I was one who kind of know where the story is always going to go, but the route that it takes me there is just a long, arduous journey. So for this next one I'm working on, I am going to try and out,
Yeah.
and I do like the idea of having your roadmap, but coming back to the scenes after you've written a little bit. I really am intrigued by that idea.
And and
Yeah.
and another trick I think too is like, every 25% or so, or every big major plot point, stop, take a look at your outline and fix what you
Yeah,
need to fix moving forward.
yeah, that's
Yeah. It's quicker, honestly. It's
Yeah.
self-preservation because, people don't always know, but like if you're writing a book a year, you're writing a book in like a few months and revising it for 9 months. You know what I'm saying? Like you're not writing a book in a year. You're writing a book in like 3, 4 months. And then
And
so
often you're overlapping with other projects. So you've got something in edits,
yes.
you've got something in development, you're writing something. It's
Yep.
it's a bunch of moving parts of different
Yeah.
stories.
And so, like, I was writing for the first time on contract, which is very different, where they're like, "Cool, you have to write the synopsis." I'm like, "Write the synopsis? I haven't written
What
the
is
book yet."
that?
That's what you do after you write the book, right? So it's like book 2 was a whole journey. And so it's just self-preservation because it's faster to do this than to have to like
Yeah,
write a whole nother draft, you
yeah.
know?
that's what I'm hoping is going to happen. That I'll be,
Yeah.
more. Efficient doesn't sound like the right word, but it kind of is. Where I
Yeah.
focus on making the best story I can
Mhm.
in
Yeah.
a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah. So why did you make the switch to YA and why did you make the switch back? Is that
Yeah, no, I had the first few books I ever wrote were YA, and then I started writing adult. But my first adult book was a very young version of an adult book. Like the main character is only 22, and I got all kinds of comments like this reads as YA, and I was like, well, yeah, that makes sense because I was writing YA before I wrote that book. And then the next book I wrote after that was like a little bit older, but still it felt a little bit like the themes were themes of YA, and I felt like I had an itch to write YA that I wasn't scratching.
Mhm.
And then so I just ended up writing a YA book, and then, ended up writing another and another, you know how it goes. But then it was never my intention to leave adult behind. So I kind of talked to my agent about the fact that I felt like my first 2 adult books read a little bit young anyway, and I would like to relaunch an adult brand with a slightly aged up adult brand now that I have the YA brand as well, to kind of pull those 2 apart. Because if I kind of went back to writing adult books the way I did with my first 2, I felt like they would read too similarly to my YAs and it wouldn't feel like 2 different brands.
Right.
So I really kind of tried to relearn how to write adult in writing this book. And I studied a lot of authors whose books I felt like were the right age, like the right tone I was trying to capture. And I really tried to kind of revise my adult writing style when I went back out with the new project. So that I could have both of them now going at the same time.
Wow. Is that hard to do, or are they so different that it is easy to keep separate?
I noticed that it was more about, well, first of all, I luckily got an editor in adult who helped me figure out, like, for example, she helped me put flashback scenes in and things that you don't really get to do in YA so much, and like judiciously do those types of things. And then I also noticed that I needed to be careful about the themes I was writing about. And like I wanted to write about Summer and the loss of her mother, and Leo and the loss of her sister, but I didn't want those to read as YA, which they can very easily do. So I had to think a lot about like, what types of things does Summer feel about her mom? I don't want it to be like rebelling against her or trying to find my own self and personhood, because that's more YA. Like I don't want coming of age. I want like feelings of grief and feelings of loss. So I had to really think about that, like the tone of what adult women experience as opposed to what young girls experience, and make sure it felt that way. So I wasn't accidentally just reinvoking my YA style into the adult book.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it was great. I love this book. I loved it.
I'm so glad. I'm so happy.
It's amazing. And Wendy is giving away 2 copies of You Can Trust Me. These are early copies, y'all. It's not out until June 13th, but you could win one if you live in the US of A. So all you have to do is answer this question about our killer guest, and we will pick from the correct answer. Bonus points for joining the club or subscribing to our YouTube channel. We have a giveaway. The question is, oops, sorry, pushed it twice. Where does Wendy live? If you were listening, you know the answer. If you maybe got in a little bit late, you might want to go back and rewind to the beginning, because we do talk about that. So drop it in the comments, and we will come back around this time tomorrow and pick 2 US winners from the pile at random.
Yes. And the Killer Author Club loves bookstores. And of course, we appreciate your support of them. So Wendy selected the fabulous Romans in Pasadena, California, where you can pre-order your very own copy of You Can Trust Me, which is out June 13th. As well as Wendy's other books. So Wendy, tell us why Romans is so special to you.
Okay, well, first of all, if you walk in, it is the coolest bookstore. Like it's big. It's got like, it's like the size of 3 smaller bookstores, and they have like a whole upstairs area. Their kids section is incredible. And when you first walk into the bookstore, they have on the right-hand side an entire just like shelf dedicated to local authors. Now, Los Angeles is not always the friendliest place for local authors. I think sometimes because we have so many celebrity authors here that bookstores can be quite choosy. And especially I've noticed that bookstores are not always that friendly to like indie authors. But in Vroman's, on their local authors shelf, they shelf indie authors. And when I've gone in to sign books, they've just been super welcoming, and they're just the nicest people. They're also the most established and well-known bookstore in LA. By some standard, most people will say like I think they're the oldest indie bookstore in LA. And so they're just great people. They shelf everything, all genres, and they're just kidlit. Adult sections are on point. And so we love them. They're wonderful. Yeah.
Make sure to stop by the next time you're in Pasadena.
Yeah, they're fantastic. You could be in there for hours. They're in a cool spot in Pasadena too, like lots of little shops and walking and like tourist attractions and stuff over there too. So definitely if you visit.
Love it. Well, so we also have a segment that we celebrate our fellow authors as much as we'd love to invite every amazing killer author on this show. There are only 3 of us and we like to sleep and eat. So, but we do want to celebrate. We cannot let this go by without celebrating a couple of very special releases. So let's see if I can find, I'm doing the graphics today. This is not normally my thing.
Okay, you're doing great.
About 10 Americans who have been selected to beta test a new piece of spyware, but when the timer hits 0, only one of them can win. And the killer speech about an African-American U.S. senator and victim of a hate crime and the FBI agent determined to get to the truth. Congrats to Kevin and Anthony, and make sure to check out their books today.
Yay. Yes. And we've come to that time of the show where membership has its privilege. So for every episode, we choose a name from the Killer Author Clubhouse hat to win a piece of KAC. So it could be t-shirts, mugs, candles, totes, hats, all of which can be found at killerauthorclub.com. And tonight's winner is Lisa Guberman Parker. So congratulations, Lisa. Please send one of the killers your address and we'll send some killer author swag your way.
Yes. And good news, Wendy, you survived the Killer Author Club. Boom. So we have a little memento for you. We will send it to you. You can print it out.
Oh, cool.
Hang it on your wall. Tell everybody about how you survived the Killer Author Club.
Yes.
I love it.
And so thank you so much. Thank you to everyone for tuning in and for Wendy for being here. And we'll be back actually next week on April 18th, same time, same place with the Jocelyn Jackson talking about her buzzy new book, With My Little Eye. And go ahead and pick up our next book club book. We are so excited about this. We have the one and only Alex Finlay joining us and his thriller, What Have We Done, which is, I think, Kimberly, both you and I have read it, and it's amazing.
Fantastic. And I wish I had a graphic, but I do not.
And he'll be stopping by the clubhouse and the clubhouse only on May 30th. Okay, so for full schedule, episodes, recipes, merch, come on over to the killerauthorclub.com and we'll see you back right here 1 week from now. And in the meantime, go buy yourself the Killer Author Club t-shirt.
Bye, guys.
Everybody.
I guess I'm the killer.